I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we ask that you bless us today. We ask that you give us guidance and direction as we think and as we plan and strategize. We ask for that collectively. We also ask for that in our own individual lives. In your name, amen.
Thank you. Should have all received copies of last month's minutes meeting, and are there any additional corrections?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Sure, if you like.
I'm back again. The Spielman project additional was advertised, everything is in order, and I'm here for, first of all, if there's any questions on that project. If not, I'm asking your permission for the use of the ARP funds for that project.
We already discussed most of this last month, I think, right?
Correct.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Kathy, second. She was looking like, what?
Who? Yeah, I got it.
All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Corey?
Like I said, I just want to say on that, I think it's a great project. I definitely want to do it. I just want to see all of them at one time to make a collective decision. I'm sure I would have voted yes if we got to that point, so I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much.
What's the number? On the resolution?
You never have a resolution after
Resolution
12?
number?
We'll look it up here real quick. You gotta look up the resolution though. I think it's 12, but I'm not positive.
11. Thank you.
11.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm handing around Resolution 2022-11. This is a resolution adopting and approving the use of $697,046.47 in funds from the ARPA fund to support the Motorola Spellman project that Sheriff Dan just mentioned. Now it's my turn. County attorney. Now it's my turn. County attorney. That's next on the agenda.
We need to approve this.
Yes, we just did.
Have you had a chance to review this at home, or you want to take a couple minutes to look at it here? Resolution?
Sorry.
Need a motion to approve the resolution.
Oh,
Did we just do that?
the vote counted. We just are signing the resolution.
Okay. Any more, Joe, Mary?
Yes, one other thing. What I have is essentially a recapitulation resolution that summarizes all of the uses of ARPA funds that that the council has approved to date. That's not what's been spent. That's just what's been approved. I sent everybody out a summary sheet indicating what has been spent and what has been allocated. And what I have here is Resolution 12. This resolution is going to assist the auditor who has a report coming up to the Department of Treasury on April 30th, is that correct?
By April 30th.
By April 30th. And at that time, he needs to present to the Department of Treasury all of the information to indicate what has been spent, why, and whether or not it's been in conformity with the ARPA guidelines. This essentially summarizes all of that information so that Tony only needs really one sheet of paper and the budget, and he should be taken care of. So I'm asking that you approve Resolution 12. It is worded, in fact, almost identically with the caption of it, with all of the information identifying the fund, identifying the amount that was initially placed into the fund, the fact that we adopted an ordinance that provided for an ARPA fiscal recovery plan for the county, the fact that we have revenue loss of $10 million, and we are using it in the following ways, and then I enumerate the 9 different things that we have done to include the Spillman project, which we've just passed today. So I would pass that around and ask for you to adopt that resolution summarizing the ARPA uses to date. The other thing that I wanted to mention was I sent out to all of you an ARP request funds form. I have had one person make an inquiry about having some ARPA funds, and they provided me some of that information. It's good that I received it because that way I could do research and find out what, if anything, it would be applicable to use the ARPA funds. So I can use that form, if you'd like, take that form, have people fill it out, go through it and ascertain whether or not it is a viable use of the ARPA funds. And at that time, it can come before council for consideration as to whether or not you'd like to appropriate those funds for those purposes. So that's just a proposed form to be used. You don't have to vote or make any comment with regards to it. It's just something that's a suggestion. The other thing is we had some issues with regards to ascertaining the appropriate procurement procedures for some of these projects. We've gone through and taken care of all of those issues. We've done everything by the book thus far. We just needed to verify that we had done so. Now we're looking into the possibility of being able to use some of those ARPA funds under the $10 million heading to substitute and to supplement ordinary budget information. It's kind of a tricky way of utilizing the money, and it's very specific language necessary in order to do so in a resolution, but it might be able to be done. We're researching that to ascertain whether or not that's possible. If so, that'd be a huge chunk of the budget that can be supplemented, general funds, to be supplemented with ARPA funds. So looking into that, give you more information on that as I understand and become more familiar with it. Yes.
I guess just to backtrack a little bit, do we need to vote on this separate resolution as well for the spending?
2022.
Yes,
That's why we did.
2022, just a summary resolution. I just wanted to have you adopt that. So if you would adopt a summary resolution, just recapitulating all of the uses of ARPA funds, that's what we need today.
So you want to do that now? Motion to approve?
Second.
This is Resolution 2022-12.
Yes.
All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Tony?
Want to wait and do the salary ordinance additionals and so forth till the end, or do you want to do those now?
What's your call? Let's do them now.
Do them now? And I only have one other thing, we just need to discuss something, so. Okay. Did you all receive the salary ordinance additionals, transfers and so forth? Okay. Do you have any, we can, let me see, let's go with the salary ordinances first. In the treasurer's office, we have Kim McDowell. Probation, Secretary Kara Bloom, and Soil and Water is Kelly Amstutz. And I do believe those are all replacement positions, correct? So if there aren't any questions on the salary ordinances, get those out of the way.
Motion to approve the amended salary ordinance.
Make a second.
And that in, Fred?
Okay. Next in line, I have the additionals. The American Rescue Plan Act, obviously, we've already done. So the other thing that we have is IT, and that is for secondary circuits for $78,000. If there are questions, Stan or Rex might be able to answer from the steering committee. Fund-wise, Bree might be able to help answer some of that as to what that is.
Stan, is that the labor portion from 2021 that never got finished?
Yeah, because there was some, when Joey had a stroke, I think there's some stuff that
Yeah. So it was already approved and it just reallocated back to,
was already approved, so, yeah. So now we're able, we've got somebody else to finish up some of the work and stuff, so. I don't know if the sheriff has any additional comment on that
I'm sorry.
for the $78,000 additional to finish up the secondary circuit. So, as far as I know, that was just, had already been approved last year.
Correct. Correct. It just wasn't spent all last year because of backups and all that, so the money was not used, and so being asked for again.
Yeah.
so I'll make a motion to approve it.
Who's second?
Me.
So the price is still good from last
Yeah,
year
they
to
bought
this
up the
year?
prices, they just couldn't get all the materials in and stuff like that, so we never used the money.
It was strictly labor.
Okay.
You back on?
Motion and seconded to approve the amount by way of request. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay. Then we have transfers. In three, we have commissioners, jail, and highway. And they're just moving money around to accommodate some of the items that you saw when we emailed that. Are there any questions on the transfers?
Tony, I have a question about the highway. Because when we did the budget, we had included their raises into that. So why is there a 36,000 increase?
I don't know, but I think it has something to do with Tim Barkey resigned, left, and so forth. So Paul and Brad are taking those duties together.
Right, but we, at budget time, we allocated that money already during budget time and put it into their budget because he told us specifically what line item to take it from to move it up. So why is there now an additional 36 when we already compensated for that at budget time?
Bree, do you have an answer to that?
It was in their individual line items, like it was in the supervisor and this is a supervisor, and they're paying out the extra out of highway engineer. So they wanted it to match like it was last year, and it wasn't budgeted that way. So that highway engineer line item is actually in the red right now. So they're just moving money into it.
They didn't take all of it out of Barkey's old position.
Barkey got paid out of county general.
And we
Marty
moved,
got paid
we
out
moved
of
that
commission.
to MBH.
We moved it to MBH.
Yes, okay.
But last year, it was split out, and they didn't want it to be in their specific line items. So that way, if we do get an engineer, it's not coming out of their line items, it's coming out of the engineer line item.
So this is more of a transfer?
Yeah, it's just a transfer. they're just moving it from their line items to that, engineer line item.
So the money is there, it was just in the line, it was just in other lines, they'd rather have it in another line.
So still just holding that position open is all they're doing, then feeding the two out of
Yeah,
it.
so that way then, say if they get an engineer, then it's not as, quite as difficult to separate the out line items. Their regular pay is coming out of their regular line.
So we decide which line item to move from where.
Any other questions or comments?
We need a motion on that.
Need a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
John, Kathy. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Everybody's in agreement.
You want to get these first, or do you want to get them at the end?
I'll get it.
Or there's three of them. The paper clip came off of one of them. Those papers come around, there's three of them to sign. And then Dennis will still need to sign when they get to you.
Wait a minute till he's passed around.
Yeah, we can give them to sign if you want.
They're replacing.
Just don't forget.
No.
Have those two.
This might be a record.
It's on, oh, there it goes.
That we're gonna have to sit here.
Jessica, would you like to present yourself?
110-5.
I still have something, but I'm gonna go ahead and let them get back to work.
So this is my first time doing a grant approval, so hopefully I give you all the information you need. We're looking to apply for a grant from the Indiana Department of Health. It's a $1,000 grant, and this is the first time they're offering it, but every year I complete a survey for them that basically they ask about how many employees we have in the health department, what we pay, what positions, what programs we offer. This is the first year that they're gonna give us $1,000 to fill out the survey. So we figured if it's something we already do every year and they're gonna give us $1,000 to do it, we might as well go for that. So we're seeking approval to apply for that.
I'll make that motion.
Corey and Fred?
Corey and Fred.
Motion to approve the grant request. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
So do I have you sign this now or this at the back?
Is that the thing? Let me see it. Yeah, then you'll go before the commissioners.
Yeah, I'm on their agenda today.
So just put.
Just got the
Mark
survey.
that.
What can you say?
It's just an annual survey that the state health department has us do every year. They ask just questions about the department, how many employees we have.
Overall.
Yeah, well, yeah, just the health department, yeah, it's just general questions about what kind of programs we have.
up for a grant in this year?
Yeah, they're giving a grant of $1,000 to every county that fills out the survey this year.
You ain't about to show it, right?
Yep.
Can you go with the extra copy when you can with the
Yep.
commissioners so I can have one too?
Sure, yep.
Eric can also do the survey next year, they get $1,000.
Right, I think that's their incentive, is not everyone was filling it out, so this is their way to, yeah, long survey. It's quite a long survey, it's like a couple hundred pages long, but
I
Yeah, but I think depending on what questions you answer, it skips. It's predominantly
I thought I would share, take a moment of your time to share some of the statistics that came out of the annual health board report that was presented this month at the health board meeting. And the numbers are really impressive.
Can't hear you.
The numbers are really impressive. These are numbers that relate to health board activity. They had 312 retail inspections. That's almost 6 a week. They have a combined total of over 475 on-site sewage system inspections for site evaluation, wetness checks, and soil tests. They issued 1,074 birth certificates. They issued 1,339 death certificates. And total fees collected was $41,812.75. There were a total of 417 live births, 266 out-of-hospital births, which is significant by way of numbers. Half of our people are being born at home. Total number of patients seen for COVID-19 is 2,717 people passed through their doors or corridors. And patients seen for COVID shots, COVID-19 shots, 5,386 doses were administered. This is all by the health department. And these numbers are significant. And interestingly enough, the last thing I'll share with you is that there were 286 people died in Adams County last year. Numbers are significant. Just a heavy schedule of activity supported by a limited number of staff. So I thought I'd share that with you because that guarantees our county health.
Okay, if you want to go back to me,
Tony?
I think the only thing, other matters, we had discussed at last month's meeting that in April, we would need some guidance to tell departments how to fill their budgets. So I think we started the discussion last month a little bit and carried it over to this month, so discuss away.
So I had proposed last month, trying to be transparent with everybody, what I proposed that we do. It's not a secret to this board or anybody in here what I've been concerned about for the last 2 years. I've been saying these numbers are not anything new, but I just think we need to get a hold of some of this stuff. The rate of the tax increases, the amount of new taxes is just something that I haven't been okay with this whole time. So, we didn't make the progress I wanted to make last year. That's why I voted no in the last 2 budgets. So I'm hoping this year we can change that course a little bit. So the proposal I made last month was that we say, we've raised taxes 8 years in a row. Let's not make this the 9th. And when I say raise taxes, I'm not talking about your property is worth more, so you get taxed more. I'm not talking about that. I'm only talking about raising the tax rate. We have raised that property tax rate every year, and I'm saying let's stop that this year. So as we make our budget plan, let's start it with a baseline of no tax increase. I'm not even asking for any kind of a change. Let's just not raise it this year. I don't think we're going to need the extra revenues. Houses are going to be worth more. I'm sure of it, which means you're going to have more tax revenue without even raising the rate. You're going to have more income tax next year because a lot more people are working than they were during COVID. You're going to have more revenue from that. And we've got quite a bit of unspent. I know there's argument about where is it and which account is it in and all that, but across the board, I think that there's no reason that we need to raise those taxes again. So I say we change course, don't raise taxes. The second thing I think that I'd like to see us do is try and limit our budget to cap it at the same as what it was last year. We were at 28 million last year. 10 years ago, we were at 15 million. So we've almost doubled that budget, and that's way faster growth than what inflation was. Inflation was only 19% over that period. So instead of trying to do a real quick course correction that's going to be painful and hurtful, let's just limit future government growth. That's all I'm asking. I think that's a reasonable and responsible way to get back on track. Doing that would allow us to let inflation work in our favor. If we can keep our top line budget the same, 28 million, then you use some of the unspent money. You've got 10% across the board that's unspent. Let's use that. And you're basically, if inflation is 7 or 8% this year, you're letting that work for you. And you're allowing that to effectively feel like a tax cut, all while you're not actually hurting or cutting any particular program. A lot of us in this room, I think, respect Governor Daniels quite a bit. Now, that's something that he did. And it's a strategy that he employed over at Purdue. Instead of saying we're going to lower tuition, he just said we're going to cap it every year. And for whatever it's been now, 12 years, they haven't raised tuition. It's just a lot easier to cap growth than to go into negative, hurtful spending. So I think we keep that budget at the top. And then the third thing that I proposed is just that I want to see us begin looking into a reduction or removal of the wheel tax. I think there's a lot of money in the highway department right now. A lot of it's unspent. I think we had 1.8 million unspent last year. The wheel tax was it's new. We've only had it since 2018. I think in our budget line item, there's 650,000 budgeted and we only spent 87. So it's a new tax that I just want us to evaluate and see, do we really need that? I think that would be the easiest, least painful tax increase to look at trying to work on. So again, these are guidances. This isn't a final thing, but these are kind of the directions and proposals that I have.
I have a question. Wasn't the consultant group that we hired, wasn't the recommendation to increase the tax with point number 1?
Yeah, that is true. The company.
That was the recommendation, and we're going to go against it though?
So my opinion on that is that they were brought in to help us make sure that the budget fit, that we weren't spending more than we were budgeting, and that we had a flat and sustainable budget. So if that was their stated goal, then their perspective is bring in as much revenue as you can to make sure that your county is solvent. And while that's laudable, at the same time, it's bad policy to take as much taxes as you can. So it may be good fiscal to make sure that you're solvent, does not mean it's good policy to take as much money from the taxpayer as you possibly can. So I've heard the argument a handful of times that you can't recoup those taxes later. I don't like that mentality. I think you're taking it from people. So it's, we have 34, I think is what I saw in one of your guys' reports last week, $34 million in our accounts right now, and our total budget's only 28 million. So we have, I don't even know what that math is, 1.25 years of reserves. We don't need more revenue right now. That's just not something that we need.
Well, I agree with you completely. I don't want to raise taxes. Nobody wants to raise taxes or pay more taxes, but the fact that you can't recoup those funds is a true statement. It's on a 6-year cycle. So if you lower the levy, that stays in the cycle with a 2-year lag. So you will be less capable of getting funds for 6 years.
So we're not talking about lowering taxes. We're talking about not raising them. And the
Well,
problem
if you
is,
accept a lower levy than what's recommended, that new percentage will go into the cycle for 6 years.
okay, and
And
so
coming into unknowns, there's the COVID.
right. So where you said about the recommendation, I think that's the part that I've been saying for 2 years now that I think we are misunderstanding. When the state comes along and says your growth quotient, that does not mean they're recommending you take that money. In fact, it's the opposite. They're saying you are allowed only to take up to this increase in your tax rate. And so when they come to us and say, you're allowed to raise your taxes by 4.3%, the reason they're saying that is because that's what wages grew by over the last 7 years. So they're not saying increase your revenue. They're saying you may not, you are prohibited from raising your taxes more than the growth quotient.
Yeah, that's the
It's not a
max.
it's the max. It is not a recommendation at all. And I think that it was a state policy that got misinterpreted. I think that it was originally intended, like I said, but I think the way that people have started talking about it is it's free money every year. But, you know, if the state came along and said you're allowed to raise, like if we lived in California where my wife's from, and they didn't have that rule, they said, you know, you could raise taxes as much as you want. Does that mean that we should just automatically raise it by 50% just because you're allowed to? You know, just because you're allowed to does not mean you should. So I think that growth quotient is grossly misunderstood.
I think it's protecting you in bad years too, because you will have downturns where you will go back into the 6-year average and not be able to recoup those funds, and your revenues will be less. And then you're gonna have less for, you're right, that is the average income growth. But it also pays for raises to the employees, to be able to pay them to have a living wage and increase with cost of goods and services and inflation. So it's also beneficial and sort of an insurance policy to make sure that we're able to keep up and keep growing and, you know, make our county better, safer. I understand what you're saying completely. You're not wrong in your approach. I think it's just a bad idea to inherently cut taxes on I want to cut taxes basis, and that's it.
So unfortunately, that mentality though is what has gotten us in the boat where we're at. You know, over the last 10 years, Wells County dropped their tax rate by 6%. We have raised ours by 18%. Last year, this body tried to raise property taxes by 20% in 1 year. I said before we voted on it, we're not even allowed to do that. The growth quotient won't let us do that. Why are we doing this? And we voted for it anyways. So we tried to approve a 20% increase last year from 0.68 to 0.82, I think. And this is why the state put that cap in there, because they don't want counties kind of going rogue and just taxing as much as they can so they can have huge reserves. We've got more than a year of reserves. I'm not saying that, you know, I think there's been a perception that I'm saying that we're fiscally unsound. I'm actually kind of saying the opposite. You know, there's no reason for this much tax and this much money sitting around. Well, I know there's differing opinions on it, but I mean, I don't know if you just want to take them one at a time and then we can deal with it from there. So I guess I'll make a motion on the first one that as we build this budget, we do it with the guidance that we're not raising the property tax rate next year. So that's my motion. It's my first motion.
I second that.
Are we making motions for policy?
We're voting on the guidance. We do that every year.
Can we hear from all the candidates in here that are running then?
There's a motion, there's a second. Anybody after that, I believe, anybody can debate. There's no limit. Anybody can say whatever they want.
You won't vote to approve ARPA funds for something because you don't have really all the information, and that's what you're doing right now.
To be clear, this is guidance. Every year in May or in April, every year that I've been on this council, in April, we have voted on guidance on what to tell the department heads. This is absolutely no different. You just don't like what I'm saying is the problem.
To accept that guidance or not.
Any further discussion? We've received a
What
motion.
did you say, Dennis? Any what?
We've received a motion to
Any public discussion?
basically not raise taxes.
Any discussion?
How was that worded again exactly?
My motion is that as we build 2023's budget, the guidance that we always issue at this point would be that we try to build that with no tax increase.
The only guidance we ever do right now is the salaries, because the departments don't have a clue. If I would tell them we're not raising property taxes, they're probably gonna email me or come
They
call
won't
me
know
and be like,
that
what are
much.
you talking about? Because the only guidance we tell them right now is, hey, build your budget, here's your budget request. You can increase your wages by this percent of what council says. That's the only guidance we need right now.
So to be clear, the last couple of years, we've done guidance for them on how much to raise their wages and also how much to raise their non-wages. We talked about both. And I've been saying the last couple of years that we have to have, this conversation has got to be more in depth. We can't back ourselves into a budget. That's what we do every year. I've been saying we need more deeper guidance, more planning. We got to think this stuff through. And so that's what I'm asking for, is this is the guidance I want to try and build this process around.
I'm wondering if, since we need guidance on pay increases, is your motion like a coverall, like we're flatlining that too, or is that part of that, or?
Well, I've got three, but this one is just saying that I'd like to try and build the process without raising the property taxes.
Property taxes.
I think one of the things that we've talked over some time is, what's a reasonable cash reserve? I think we have to establish what we want to have on hand in case of emergencies. And that is our function, to maintain integrity and our fiscal responsibilities. And so we've never approached that point yet. But I think we need to say, we need to have this much money on hand, and then we go forward from there.
I would be more comfortable going with your motion of no raises.
Well, I'm gonna ask about that here in a minute too, but yeah. Because I figured it may not be the same, you guys may not have the same opinions on all of them, so that's why I'm breaking them down here.
And that one, that's just too large of a blanket to throw over. And there's too many unknowns. We don't know what numbers we're gonna get back from the state yet.
Well, this is guidance, this is not a
The
final.
money that,
I would, a more responsible guidance, a smaller blanket than a giant impact like that.
Well, I think raising property taxes is a giant impact, so I'm just saying, let's just.
No, we're
stop that
not,
for a
nobody said we are. Nobody said we're raising them.
I've got a question on.
most of, well, excuse me one second. Most of the money that we control is the general fund, and we were within 2.5% of that. That's pretty close for $14 million.
And I've got a question on property taxes. Corey, when we're talking about property taxes, I had sent out to you all, the article was in the Fort Wayne Gazette, and the county auditor up there says that he is seeing the housing market, because of the housing market volatility and increase in home prices, that people can expect, and this is from the state, that property tax is going to be higher. So it's not really us that is controlling that property tax. It's more the state. And what did that article say, 7 to 8%? Or?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's another thing that I feel like I've said this till I'm blue in the face, but it's not sinking in. When I'm talking about tax increases and new tax dollars, I already factored out the growth in the fact that the property is worth more, which is what that article was about, and is what a lot of people keep thinking I'm saying. If I included those numbers, then when I say 22 million of new taxes, it'd be, I don't know, double that. It'd be a lot more. I already took that out. I am only talking about we've raised the tax rate. That's it. So yes, people are seeing property tax rate increases. And then on top of that, the fact that the market is making properties worth more also adds it. But I'm not even talking about that, because you're right, we can't control that. So none of my figures, they've already excluded that already.
That's not the only thing that's going up. Everything is going up, not just property values, everything.
And if everything goes up, then that's called inflation, and you're covering that because your property tax rate is a percentage. So when values go up, when wages go up, that goes up too. You don't need to also increase the rate.
Does The assessments don't go up equal to what the inflation rate is.
At the moment, they're going faster. Property values are skyrocketing.
Not by assessed values.
That's up to your elected assessor. I don't know what they're doing for this year. We have a new one.
As you did your calculations, did you take into account caps losses?
Yeah, I'm talking about just the actual new amounts that we've levied, or that we've put on people, you know, between the wheel tax and the rate increases.
Right, but I mean, as far as property taxes, I mean, my property taxes could go up 20%, and I wouldn't pay more than 2% of my assessed value. So it's not an effective tax.
Right.
Increase if you take caps losses.
Right, which I think that's another good point. We had, you know, a couple of reports that was presented to the commissioners over the last couple of weeks when I wasn't there to respond about the fact that we have that our median tax rate is comparable to some of the other counties. And I think that takes a little bit of analysis. Hopefully you guys can stick with me on this, but there's two problems with that. When you're looking at the median tax rate, that total tax rate, so when you get your final tax bill, that's got the county's tax rate, your cities, your schools, townships, municipalities, they're all lumped in there. So when you say your total tax rate, that's not apples to apples, because if your counties and cities, everyone else is doing a good job. That doesn't give the county the right to just kind of run wild to make up the difference. Like, so when you conflate them all, that's not apples to apples. We got to compare the county tax rate to other county tax rates. That's apples to apples. Another issue is what you're talking about is we have a lot more people in Adams County than there are in Jay and Wells. And residents have a big tax deduction. You know, when it's your home, there's a big homestead deduction and some of these other things. And so when we have 34,000 people and Jay only has 20, what's happening is you have a lot more individuals that artificially deflate that median value, you know, because there's a lot more percentage of people that are in farms and commercials. So again, you got to just go back to apples. What's the county tax rate? It's a county tax rate.
I think one thing I would say, and obviously I've had disagreements on this since I was still on council. One thing we have to consider, and Baker Tilly Page said this in that Zoom meeting, it's fine for us to discuss what we do here with the county and so forth. And Fred had a point. We sent out to you the budgets for the last, since 18. And actually the county general departments are pretty darn close to what they asked for. And what it was that Paige said was, whatever we end up doing here affects everybody downstream. And that includes townships, cities, towns, libraries, and schools. So I don't vote, I'm not on council, I am just advising that if we try to do something and we do leave that money on the table, then we could be affecting others. That's my concern with all of that. And
To help
again,
you,
I'm not voting. My job as auditor is to look over all these numbers and get you guys the best information that I possibly can and have you evaluate it and discuss it. And, you know, Bree has spent hours getting some of this stuff together. We've had some of you in the office. So I am just advising. What you all do is totally up to you. You're the council. You're everything fiscal. I did want to mention on the wheel tax that you talked about, Stan, Ed, were you on council? The three of us were on council when that happened. We did not want to pass that wheel tax. We did not want to do it. But the commissioners at that time, Rex is probably on there, Doug was on there, we were being told by the state when we were asking for money for our roads, are you doing everything that you can for yourself? In other words, pass the wheel tax if you don't have it, because we're not going to keep sending you money if you don't. That's the whole reason You guys were on there, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that what happened?
You're right.
So that's not a tax that we wanted, Corey. That's a tax we're pretty much forced to do to continue getting state money for the roads. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say. As auditor, I'm just saying I'm giving you the best knowledge that I can. You are the 7 that vote on it.
Two of those things. So the first one we were talking about, or Baker Tilly had mentioned if we make some changes that can affect other entities. To be real clear, she was talking about changing the income tax because the income tax is what the Income Tax Council is comprised of. Because the majority of residents in Adams County are in the rural areas, this fiscal body effectively determines what the income tax rate is. So that's what she was talking about.
So the property tax is in fact exactly what Tony said.
And I'm talking about the property taxes. What we do to our property taxes has zero impact on the property tax rate that the cities, schools, and townships impose. They can do whatever they want.
The dollar value is directly affected. That's the only thing it affects.
No, we set your own tax rate. Everybody sets their own rate. They can choose whatever they want to
If we
do.
have a lower rate or a higher rate, the dollars generated there goes to the cities.
No,
the
it does not.
townships.
No, definitely does not. We set our tax rate at we're at 0.7. The school, I forget, I don't know what theirs are, but if they set theirs at, let's just say 0.1 or 0.2, that goes to them, not us. Everybody sets their own tax rate. The income tax is the one that is one income tax, no matter what it is. That's why it all has to be done collectively. So if we were to say, let's lower the income tax, then that affects everyone's revenue. But everybody sets their own property tax. And the other thing you said was
Wheel tax.
the wheel tax. I understand why it maybe originally went in, but there's a lot of money there. We're swimming in money right now, and it needs to be reevaluated. I'm not saying we cut it today. I'm saying we need to start looking into it, because there's a lot of money there and it's not being spent. So that would be a potentially easy one to deal with.
We don't have direct control over that.
Why not?
We don't.
We can't
That's
so we
the
can
highway
impose a
department.
wheel tax, but we can't take it off?
That's what, it's not in the general fund.
Okay, that's the other thing that has really frustrated me, is this obsession with the general fund. That is the most, we can use the general fund for anything. That's why there's so much attention to it. But we set the wheel tax. We determine what that value is. We created it. You guys just talked about that. We can lower it. We can raise it. We set the property tax rate. We set the rate for county general, which is 0.54. We set it for the health department, which is 0.19 for the jail, for Parks and Rec. I mean, there's an individual tax rate that we set for all of those accounts.
And they've also told us that this is money it's not just planned for this year, it's for coming years and coming projects.
Right, but you just got done telling me that we don't have control over all these other accounts, but we do. We set those rates for all of those accounts. We have adopted a sort of a passive mentality, and we are in control of this ship here, and we need to do something about it. So I think there's a motion. I've got 2 more coming. So there's a motion, there's a second. Is there other debate on this motion yet?
Want to read the motion, Tony?
It was made by Corey, second by Ben, that the guidance would be to try not to raise property taxes. Right? Is that the motion?
The rate.
The property tax rate.
Rates.
Property tax rates.
Moved and
That
seconded.
was the motion.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of?
Aye.
Opposed? Have to speak a little louder. How many?
Aye.
That's confusing. Okay, so the yeses are who? Me? And the noes? Everybody else. Okay,
And
second
I'd like to
motion.
note on that, I voted no because there are too many unknowns yet to have such a large blanket for guidance moving forward. Especially coming off of COVID and all the restrictions and loss of revenue there.
Which would make sense if it was a final vote, but this is just a vote for guidance to try and build the budget. So my second motion is to try and cap the budget. Let's try and keep it at the same level. 28 million is what we've risen to now. And we've got 34 million in the reserves at the moment, and we have 10% across the board that's unspent. So my goal would be, can we try and build a budget that stays without growth to make inflation work for us instead of against us?
Aren't we always trying to do that? I mean, that
You
just
tell
seems
me,
like-
we're double the budget in 10
That
years,
seems
so
like
I
a
don't think so.
ridiculous statement to me. And then you're making it in a time of record inflation. I don't think anybody's frivolously
And we've also
raising the budget.
increasing our IT program,
That's $1 million. You got 13 more a year to deal with.
right? I'm just giving examples. We have increased our budget in growth. And $1 million is not over 10 years. The IT budget was largely nothing
How can
for
we
an
account,
extended amount of time. And now our entire county is dependent on IT and the development and the maintenance
I
and.
respond to that. Okay, so you
I
got,
don't want to debate, we have grown as a community, as a county, our expenses will go up. Employee pay, year after year, additional employees. I mean, it's not fair to just say we've doubled our budget. I've doubled my income in 20 years. But,
Okay.
That's just a very vague, with no history behind it. You're right, but the devil's in the details. We have grown.
okay, let me give you some details then. So we've gone from 15 million to 28. So it's a 13 million per year increase in 10 years. What accounts for that? 19% of that increase is inflation. So you talk about things costing more, everything being more, that is inflation. That's 19%. So that's 1/5 of the growth. That I completely understand. You've got IT, which has grown by $1 million per year. So you got a 13 million increase per year, right? $1 million of it is IT. You've got another $1 million of it is the fact that we have 100 more employees than we had 10 years ago. It's not just that the employees have more wages, there's 100 more of them. Okay, that's not just regular growth. It's not like we've had population growth like that. So that's another $1 million. So now that's 2 of the 13 million. And then after that, you've got your wheel tax, which added about 2 million more per year in. So now you're at 4 of the 13. And then you've got your inflation, which accounts for 19%. That leaves more than half without a big ticket item to point at. So just saying it's IT, that's 1 out of 13 million.
I
That's
didn't say it's
definitely
just
not the
IT.
answer.
I was giving examples like you are, and they're great examples.
Yeah, it's just
Was
one though, but it's one of the biggest. I'll give you that. So across the board, we had 10% unspent. I realize it's different in each account, but I'm saying, I really think we can build a budget. I am sure we can do it. That keeps that top line number at 28 million. There are places that are unspent that we can use. There are places that we could probably cut, small here and there, and places that need to increase. But across the board, I really believe we could build a budget that stays at 28 million without any significant cuts to anything. And that would effectively be a tax decrease with the inflation that we have.
That's a legit, I second that motion on the basis that that's pretty much how we did it last year. Our intent was to not raise the budget. We wanted to include no raises, no budget increases. I'll second Corey's motion on try to maintain our same budget as last year.
And I'll say last year we ended at a 6.5% increase.
motion and seconded to maintain 2023 budget at 2022,
What was that actual
28 again?
total? Was it exactly 28 million? What was
It
then I could look it up.
It was very close. It was 27.93 or something. Hold on, I can
So
tell
you
you.
just rounded up to 28?
It's within 27,932,000.
Not the exact figure.
I can pull it later. I mean,
just make it 28.
Yeah, he's
that's fine.
rounded up just a little bit. It's not that big a deal.
Have a motion before us. All those in favor of?
Aye.
Aye.
Or how about raise our hands here?
Oh, wow, that's.
I think that's always the goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think we try every year. I have no problem with trying the best we can to maintain that.
I think as we're going through it, what we need to do is, when we do our budget process, we have to find a way during those 3 days to make sure we don't get lost in the weeds. Because we've spent the last 3 years, we've spent 3 days going through every line item, and then we spend 10 minutes at the end saying, what was the collective effect of that? And all of a sudden, it's too late. By the time you're at the end of it, and all of a sudden you've got a 6-7% increase. Well, now what do we do? So that's what I said last year, and that's what I'm saying again this year. We got to find a way when we go through that process to be keeping the big picture in mind the whole time. Otherwise, we can have a goal and then it falls apart.
Stan, you had a question?
If I could just kind of speak to the effect of having unspent money. Because we've had this discussion before too, but just, I think to say that we're swimming in money is a bit misleading. And a couple weeks ago, I went down and met with Brad and Paul and Becky and kind of talked about a bunch of, because we had decisions to make too, as far as seeded money and stuff too. And there was an accumulation in some of their funds, their MVH fund, their real tax fund. But part of the reason is, of course, the unknown, if we have needs on bridge repairs or bridge failures. But the other thing is upcoming projects, because before we can commit to a road project or a bridge project, we have to have that money in the bank. We can't commit to that project until we have the cash to back it up. So there's a couple reasons that the highway department maintains those funds. And Brad, you can correct me if there's anything else, but so there's reasons to have that unspent money. So as far as what kind of an influx into those funds, that's definitely debatable. But there is reasons to have that savings account for them. Some of the other funds that we have that are unspent are some of the CUME funds, because we've got CUME Bridge, CUME Cap, CUME Courthouse, CUME Jail. Those are funds that are intended to grow. Those are savings accounts that we tell the taxpayers, we are specifically assessing this levy to you for a specific reason. So just like as we look at things like the Superior Court building itself is in poor shape. It's old, it's not handicap accessible on the second floor. It has a lot of security risk. So that's something that we're going to be looking at replacing somehow in the near future. So there's reasons to have money in those CUBE funds. Another thing that we have basically a savings account in is for health insurance. So since we're self-insured, we try to protect ourselves as far as having enough money to pay claims as they come due. We do have stop loss coverage if there's anything. So I guess to say we're swimming in money is a bit misleading when we intentionally collect some of these funds as they're assessed for particular reasons. So and as we've talked about it too, as far as the actual budget out of county general, I think the departments have been pretty darn accurate as far as how they budgeted for the last year. So they've come within what 2% or so you guys talked about as far as what their budget was. So if you flatline the budget, that's all well and good, but you have different departments with different responsibilities, some that are just strictly labor. Like the auditor's office, they have almost probably 100% labor. And then you have other departments like the surveyor and the county highway department their budget is heavily dependent on product, equipment, materials. So just to flatline the budget may affect different departments different ways. So I guess that's kind of why I've always looked at budgets from a line item point of view to try and be as accurate as I could, you know, with budgets and appropriations. So anyway, thanks for the time. Sorry about
You know, over 3 million of that additional since in the last 10 years is the jail. I mean, it's things of that nature too. I mean, it's over $3 million a year onto our budget. And as Stan mentioned, we're going to have more of that type of stuff to deal with. Part of it's, for the last 2 years, we've added $3.5 million a year from ARPA funds.
To be clear, I definitely did not include that. I did not include ARPA money in any of this because I agree that's a one-time thing. So I wouldn't include that.
And Brad, didn't we, a couple months ago, approve you to pre-buy a bunch of, I think it was pipes and some bridge materials, because everything was starting to go up and we used it.
Months ago, we went ahead and bought some pipe ahead, looking at what we might need for the year going ahead. That way we have it on hand because, the pipe prices are a little crazy right now. Yes.
So Brad, what does the wheel tax money, we've got over $2 million sitting in there. What are you allocating that for?
I mean, I can't answer, I'll be honest, I can't answer that specifically, but, for just the normal road maintenance, like we just got done spending probably almost $300,000 in stones when the guys go out and we work on the stone roads every spring. Put new stone on them, level them up, get rid of the potholes and that. So that on its own was almost $300,000 just in stone. Now of course, our next big one is chip and seal. And, we're looking at between 80 and 90 miles this year at, I'm going to say $10,000 a mile because, of course, oil went up this year and stone went up, so it's going to be a little more than that. So take that 80 or 90 miles times that 10,000 a mile, and that's just a rough figure of just material costs. That's not the fuel, all the stuff that goes with the trucks, the maintenance, and of course, the work hours.
What about that mud road too, that we're planning on doing?
And that's then, not to go into another part, but like Stan was saying, we've got right now 4 road projects that we like to have the money setting there. Rather than committing to something and not having the money, maybe it won't be there. We've got 4 road projects right now that it was working on before I came, we're working now, getting closer to getting them done. And of course, there again, with prices going up, you're talking, we have I believe about $1 million worth of projects set there right now. That's just roads. That's 4 roads that we want to work on to change over.
And I think we've got, if I'm getting it correct, there's MBH regular, MBH restricted, local roads and streets, then you add in the wheel tax revenues on top of that. So there's a lot of different money for road projects, and these 2 million or so a year of wheel tax money is new since 18. So that's what I'm saying. We're not using it right now. That would be a really easy one, instead of messing with the income tax, which like you said, can cause ripple effects, or, some of the other ones, this would be a real low hanging fruit to take a look at. So that's my third one is, as we build this budget, I'd like to see us start the process of reducing or cutting the wheel tax in some way.
One of the advantages that I voted for the wheel tax was that it all stayed here. It didn't go to state and then they decide how much to send us back. It was a tax that was incurred locally and kept locally other than just a minor administrative fee. So that was one of the reasons I was in favor of it.
Is that an actual motion for it?
Yes.
And could you word that again for me, so I have it correct?
As we build this 2023 budget, I'd like to begin the process of cutting or reducing the wheel tax.
I second that.
Give that seconded.
Do you have an idea of how much reduction? Are you talking about reducing it year after year to 0?
I want to look into it. I don't know that we know the answer right now, but I think that we need to look into what are the ramifications, what will state do if we do that, how much can we get by with, what will they let us do, how much do we actually truthfully need? So that's why I'm not saying cut it by this much. I'm saying let's just begin the process of looking at it.
Tony, can you tell us right off the bat, I don't have the form in front of me, how much was spent out of the wheel tax? What were our expenses for 2021?
I can't tell you that off the top of my head. Bree, you have your
It's 80.
computer that you can look that up?
It's 87,000.
Did you say all of 21?
What was the year-end expenditure total for the wheel tax, the county wheel tax?
I
And
think
how
Bree's
much
looking
were
that
our
up.
receipts?
If I recall, we took the lower of the possible two rates that we could have used at the time we enacted that wheel tax.
Absolutely.
You're asking about Fund 4977?
Spent 87,539 last year.
How much did we bring in?
785,865.
Wow.
I will say wheel tax goes out to all the cities and towns. Because I pay it in and then it gets paid out to all the cities and towns. So we would have to look and see if our rate affects the cities and towns too.
There's a motion and a second. I don't know if you have any other debate or.
Any other questions or comments?
I'd be willing to look into it with no promises, obviously. Like Bree said, depends on who exactly else it all affects and how much.
All
I
those
know
in
they
favor?
each get some each month. By the end of the month, we have to pay, the county gets their portion and then the cities and towns get their portion.
And all this, Corey, the cost of everything is going up and it's never coming back down. We'll never see 2018 again.
It'd have to
I don't-
multiply 10 times to use that money.
Do what?
It would have to multiply 10 times, which is what, 10,000% in order to use that much?
What much?
You only use 87 out of 700,000.
Yeah, no, I said I'm willing to look at it.
Brad was saying that some of that money is already earmarked for ongoing projects. Is that correct?
That's just our county.
But is it specific to the wheel tax? Or is it your budget altogether? You have numerous budgets.
Yeah.
So
Excuse me, no.
how do you know exactly how much is coming out of the wheel tax line item?
Yeah. Like I said, I'll be honest, I can't totally answer that to where each little, what we pay out of that for each little thing. But I will say also too, that, we want to keep MVH restricted, or specifically for certain things. Restricted side is for the roads and improvements and all that. MVH is all the other stuff that goes along with just us doing the work. So I guess my feeling is, hate to keep beating the dead horse, but everything's going up. It is. And I guess by trying to be, I guess I got a question. Would you rather see us spend that down to zero every year? I mean, I know you're thinking spend more, but would you rather see it spend down to zero every year? As a question back to you.
I think philosophically, I mean, I know, I've said this recently, it's not just something I kind of believe, it's like, this is actually something I believe, which is why, a couple people in this room have told me, you've been voted down the last two budgets, 5-1 and 4-2, let it go. But this just isn't one of those things for me. This is something that I believe it, which means I can't just let it go. And it's also not something that's a one-time vote, like it's the whole trajectory. So philosophically, like at my core, I just believe that we need to not take money out of people's pockets if we don't absolutely have to do it. And there are for sure times to do it, but it should be the last resort, not the first resort. And when I see a tax that is being unused, I definitely don't want us to just go use it so it, looks good. I think that if we don't need it, we don't need it. And so I don't want to take it out of people's pockets if we don't absolutely have to do that. So no, I don't want people to just spend it down, but, and I appreciate you, Brad. I know this is only your second, I think your second year, in this, and I appreciate you, but it's just, I think it's an easy one. Wheel tax is it's a low hanging fruit.
I mean, I'm sorry I can't answer it better. I am, and I can look into it and
Wheel tax has specific uses. When it was created, and I can't remember, I think it's 75% or something. Stan, you might have to help me on that, but wheel tax has specific uses. It's materials, and you can't use it for wages, I don't think. It's just materials.
basically whatever we can apply to the roads.
Right, anything that can go on the roads. And I can't remember what that formula was, Stan, because they changed it at one time. That 75% has to be used for materials and the other 25 for equipment or something?
Yeah, I don't remember either what that breakdown is. But I guess to be fair, just because they spent 87,000 last year doesn't mean that's what's on the books this year. Like I say, that money accumulates for projects that are coming up. So I guess that's not a fair comparison either. I don't know if you want to look at it as a savings account or a budgeted account. That's why I say those accounts are there for
0.5.
and they're there in anticipation of making roads better, making
We're at
bridges better,
0.25%.
I think we're at 0.5.
keeping up our
Could
infrastructure,
you go
because if we don't do it.
quarters?
Hey, Brad, I don't know if you know offhand roughly, how many miles of stone road do we have in the county?
106.
Are there plans to pave or chip and seal those at any point?
Yeah.
We're looking for a countywide solid surface eventually.
Eventually, that would be nice. I'm thinking that's gonna be when I'm out of here. But yes, there is a plan, we've just been talking about all night. Now next year going forward, start working on converting more of these stone roads. And so now our job is to, figure out which ones should be the first candidates, and we are doing that. So I don't mean to throw things off, but I think everybody knows where the majority of them are, So we've got to determine what is going to benefit everybody the most and what area we do it in at this point in time. So yes, we are planning on starting to convert roads. They used to, back in the day, when they had more employees and that, they would do close to 20 miles a year. What we're looking at now is we're hoping to do between 5 and 10 a year. So yes, we are coming up with a plan to start next year converting roads. And just real quick, throw out what that takes is that means our pipe crew's got to go out, look at all the pipes in the road. Anything that needs changed has got to be changed first. So hopefully through this next winter, we can do that, and then next spring and that, we can start getting it ready. So yes, there is a plan in place.
You mean chip and seal you're talking about?
We'll convert them to chip and seal.
That's
yes.
right.
It does vary year to year. The last year was 87,000, the year before that was 705,000 that was spent. So like they're saying, depends on the project that they have.
And a reminder, this is a new tax. 2018 is the first time we had this. Okay, I think,
Call for the question then. All those in favor?
What was the question?
or is this the call, or is this actual?
The motion that was made by you, seconded by
Yeah.
Yvette, to begin the process of cutting or reducing the wheel tax. Correct, Corey? Is that-
Yes, yep.
Looking at it, not doing it.
Beginning the process
Yeah, I want to begin
of,
the process of, then you're not, exactly,
say
you're not
it.
committing to it right now, but I want to start going down that road. We got to see what's entailed. I agree with you. You can't just chop it, but I want to start the process.
All those in favor? Opposed?
I'm just, like I said, solely, there's too many unknown. We're coming on off of this
vote.
record.
So I said 3.
Who said yes? Corey, Yvette, and Keith.
We're looking at the process, right?
Yep.
No, starting the process.
And
Not
who
looking
voted
at how.
who voted,
I'm for evaluating.
I just said beginning.
I think evaluating the process.
Evaluate,
yeah.
Yeah, I just said beginning the process with, whatever. We're just going down that road and
We're not
we'll
saying
see
we're
We're
what-
not
Reduce it right
committing
now.
to it.
Correct, correct.
Evaluating it.
Yeah, no,
yeah, I would
for
vote
evaluating
for
it.
yes, for evaluating it.
So doesn't the
Okay,
motion
it's
need to
not-
say
I'm not
that?
trying to be all
Yeah, that's not
difficult,
what the
but it's
motion
pretty
said.
simple. The process is we want to begin the process. That's the motion, so.
He wants to begin the process of cutting or reducing the wheel tax. That's how the motion is stated.
Yes, very simple.
Show of hands, for?
I'm for evaluating it, not getting the process of cutting it for
You
sure.
need to go there.
That's the
We're getting
point.
kind of in the weeds here, but.
Well, there's a difference.
Distinct, we are going to cut, or we're gonna look
I'm
at
just
it.
asking that we begin the process. We go down that road, we see what's involved, we figure it out, right? That's what I'm saying. Let's just go down that road. And, you know, if you get down that road and all of a sudden we determine, oh crap, this is gonna cause all kinds of problems we didn't realize, back out, right?
State
But I
your
wanna
motion
start.
that way.
Yeah, I just wanna start going that way and then see what happens.
So do you want to reword the motion to say,
No.
start
I
the
wanna
process
be-
of evaluating, or do you want to leave the motion, start the process of cutting or reducing the wheel tax?
I want to leave it the way that it is. I want to begin the process of looking at reducing the wheel tax, reducing or cutting.
Looking at reducing.
Looking at the different word that you put in there.
Corey, you're a lawyer. You should.
Okay, I'm trying to say it out loud and repeat myself exactly, but whatever. The motion is
Two
to
different
begin the process of cutting or reducing the wheel tax.
And that's how I have it here.
Yes.
And
All those in favor of starting the process?
Is that two?
Opposed? Motion fails.
So then the last one that we always talk about, which I don't have a particular proposal on, I want to hear what everybody thinks, but is the actual employee wages. And in the past, we haven't had any numbers or anything, so you guys know 2 months ago, I asked Shannon if she could give us some data this time so we can actually make an informed decision. So she presented those last month. So I don't have a proposal on that. I guess that's just where we're at, up for debate and discussion, I guess, on what do we want to do on that.
You already proposed $1 an hour raise for everybody.
I didn't propose anything. That's just what we put all together to get the numbers to show everybody what it would be. So I think you did like a 2%, 3, 4, 5, 6, like you did a whole bunch of percentages with what it would cost after factoring in all of the benefits and everything else. So we've got numbers this time. We've got data, which we can make an informed decision here.
So just to review those real quick, the $1 increase across the board, including PERF Medicare or PERF and FICA, would be $257,000. And keep in mind that this spreadsheet does not include elected officials, anybody in a matrices, anything like that. I was very clear about that from the beginning. And my reservation with that is that an elected official, once their salary has gone up, you cannot decrease it. So if in 10 years, we continue to give $1 per hour every year to an elected official, then somebody who's brand new is gonna be making whatever that person left before them. Whereas with our positions, you have a lot more flexibility in lowering that wage to match the experience level and things like that. So just keep that in mind. 3% is 87,000, 4% is 145,000, 5% is 204,000, 6 is 263, and 7 is $322,000.
Do you have any kind of a input? I mean, those are the numbers. I appreciate you putting them together, but what do you think?
Considering what we've talked about, the last 30 minutes, inflation, things going up, so on and so forth, I would personally recommend that we not offer anything less than at least $1 increase per hour, considering that last year we did a percentage, which was 3%. I think last year's inflation was 4.5 to 5, whereas this year's expected inflation is going to be like in the 6 to 7 range. I don't agree with the theory of offering a percentage every single year because the bottom stays low, the top goes up, which is why we tried to work on some of the things that we've worked on in the past. So offering at least $1 minimum is going to get most people in the point where they're competing with inflation, and it's not going to make the top heavy and the bottom low. So.
And the dollar would come out to, on average, it's like roughly, isn't it like, I think I'm looking at here, so 6% would be 263,000, and a dollar would be 256. So it's close to being 6% roughly.
But I mean, you keep in mind that an employee who makes $100,000 a year is gonna get a $6,000 increase.
Right.
Whereas under the dollar, they're only gonna get $2,080. So it's not a 6% increase for every person.
Yeah.
It's just,
Just on average across the board. Yeah. I don't have, that's a hard one. I don't know. I mean, our people need to keep up with cost of living. I think that's the reality. Shannon, do you think if we do the dollar, you're raising the band,
right,
the category? Because I think part of the discussion that we had in the wage committee, which Stan, I think you were in on that, is, Stan and Yvette, was we had a lot of people trying to move bands because it was not keeping with the wage competitively.
right.
And we tried to resist everybody messing up the system by jumping into bands they don't fit in and saying that, and you thought $1 an hour would be close to fixing those bands?
Yeah, I do, and I've said to Bree before that I regret not pushing harder last year to increase the bands for 2022. I think that was a mistake on my part, that I didn't ask you guys to do that, and I wish I had, but we can't go back now. But at minimum, I think the bands need to go up by at least $1 to continue to attract and retain talent that we need here in the county, you know, to keep this county going in terms of employees. But this would be $1 across the board for everybody, regardless of where they are. So that would just be their raise for this year is the $1, and then we would increase the starting wage by $1 as well.
That's not elected or anything like that. It's just the ones that are in the bands.
I'm fine with $1 for everybody across the board.
Is that what we're gonna put in the budget for salaries? Is work around that?
This is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the same as the other things. We're talking about guidance and building the 23 budget. So we're not, this is what we'd advertise basically, right? And that's what we're committing to right now.
Yeah, so
We're
when,
not, we can get in there and say, oh, this doesn't work, change course of
Are they,
We'll put together a letter and send out to departments with their budget requests and say, council is recommending for your budget request, you do $1 per hour raise.
and include that with their submittal, their initial submittal for review?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
then
then, yes, your budget is going to be more than 28 million or whatever when they turn it in, because you're gonna have raises.
I know we're not revisiting that whole thing, but I would say, you know, across the board, you had 2.8 million unspent last year. So there's places to move it around. I
But
realize,
a lot of it's funds they can't spend.
I know what you're about to say, which is that it's not in the same account, but I said that what we just talked about was 28 total, so we can offset it other places.
I think she's saying we can't, right?
Yeah, because a lot of, I mean, me and Tony have sent out spreadsheets, a lot of it's grants, a lot of it's NVH monies. I mean, you had, I remember, 3-4 million in NVH, like, okay, fine, tell them not to spend it, but we can't spend it in county general, so there's really not very much wiggle room right now in the budget. There's really not. Unless you're going to cut employees, you're going to cut services. I'll go back to the office supply things. I had a department head call me the other day, once again, trying to order paper, and it's over I think it was about $56 a box for paper right now.
So-
Gases went up. I mean, so I don't know where, you can tell them to cut their other line items, but they're just gonna come back for additionals next year. And then if you don't take the growth quotient, you don't have the additional money there to pull it from. And then you're gonna have the DLGF and the state denying your additionals.
Okay, a couple things. For 2 years, you guys have been telling me how we have so much money in county general, how it's been growing and we're in great condition. So to say that DLGF is gonna deny the budget because there's not enough money in there is not
So you
accurate.
have to really, whenever I turn in additionals, like today, I know I just looked, we have a little bit over 4 million in county general, but that 4 million has to get us to potentially the end of June until we get June settlement. Then that settlement's gotta get you to December settlement. So, and the numbers don't always drive, like, I don't know how to explain, the numbers in our cash balances don't necessarily always drive up with the DLGF when I do additionals. Because DLGF takes it that we are spending every single penny of our budget. So I guess kind of like earlier when you said, you know, do you want us to spend our budgets down to zero? You never want to spend your budget to zero because you got to wait a full 6 months before you get more money. So we're technically running an 18-month budget.
Yeah, like I said, I really didn't want to get back in this again, but since you're bringing that up, you know, over the last couple of years, one of the things I've been saying that I really haven't been saying too much here the last couple of months, because it is so complicated and nuanced, but I'll try and get into it here. You know, we have been budgeting more than what our revenue is. And you guys really pushed back on that hard for the last year or so, saying, but we have so much money unspent that it's okay. Don't worry about it. We're not spending it all. So as soon as I said, okay, let's use that unspent money, instead of increasing the budget, let's just use that. All of a sudden, there's only pennies available. And I said, look, you can't have it both ways. I realize that it's not as simple as you can't use it in every account for every account. I get that, okay? But that doesn't change the fact that there's still quite a bit across the board that we can look at trying to utilize. And we can get creative. I think last year, Tony, I'm going to give credit due where it's due. I think you found $1.5 million or so, or something like that, that you were able to move out of county general into another account, if I'm remembering. So there is, if we want to, there's a huge budget. We can figure this out.
And I think maybe this year, we need to do more, but I know I've reminded you guys, like, you need to pull out your tax-driven compared to your others, because our tax-driven funds are the only ones that the revenues see on the budget papers. All of those other funds, we don't report all the revenues on the budget forms that we fill out on Gateway. And, you know, yeah, we have $28 million budget, but I think there's six tax-driven.
I think there's 8, I
So,
believe.
you know, you guys, the only ones that you guys can do anything drastic as far as taxes is the tax-driven ones. All those other ones, like, I'll use drainage maintenance as one. They only budget their wages. They pay out of unappropriated. So, I mean, there's a lot of those funds, if you really want to knock down that 28 million, don't budget them and have them paid out of unappropriated. I know several years ago, council decided they wanted every budget budgeted so that you guys could see what was being spent. It didn't necessarily have to be. They're still spending it. They're still going to spend it out of unappropriated. But you guys really just, the tax-driven ones, the tax rate ones, county general, reassessment, health, those ones that are tax-driven are what means the most. Those other ones that aren't tax-driven, you can cut them. They're still going to spend it out of unappropriated because they have revenue sources coming in other ways, and it's not tax money.
You got property tax, income tax, you got wheel tax. I mean, I agree with you, we don't control the taxes on all of these, but that doesn't change the budgeting side of it, that we need to know what's coming in and what's going out. You gotta have, a budget takes both sides.
Shannon, have you had a chance as our HR coordinator to look at the health insurance expenses that we have? That's a big ticket item every year to make sure that we're getting the biggest bang for our buck, so to speak. Have you had a chance to look at that for us?
We've been in some light discussions about it, but not anything in depth at this point. No, not yet. So, and we all, just to make sure you guys all know, and I'm sure you do, health insurance is based on our claims because we're self-insured. So it's not that we are able to necessarily put an exact dollar amount on what that's going to cost us year over year, because it's based on how much we go to the doctor, right? That's all it really comes down to. So we've had a couple of conversations about it, but not anything that I'd be able to present today. I do want to go back to wages though, quickly. Bree brought up a good point. So in the compensation package that you guys passed last year that was effective when our policy manual came out in February, it offered that 25% evaluation increase year over year for employees. So I have a different spreadsheet. I sent you both, and one of them took that into consideration, the other one didn't. So the spreadsheet that I've got here is actually 75 cents for employees who are eligible for the 25 cents and $1 for those who are not. And that number is actually $370,500. It's not the 256.
Which one is the 256?
The 256 is just the $1 across the board for anybody who is eligible for the compensation package, which is, that was not right in the first place.
So, sorry, I'm a little bit confused then. So $1 across the board would be, which one of these sheets would that be then?
It's the 75-cent one. There's a plus 75 sheet, and there's a plus $1 sheet. And the 370,000 is up to $1.
What about elected officials then?
Yeah, that's something that you guys will need to decide what you want to do with elected officials. I mean, do you want to offer a percentage? Do you want to offer a flat rate? Because the $1 is obviously based off of 2,080 hours, right? So you guys don't have that calculation. You would need to figure out what you want to do there.
I mean, 370 is kind of high, because I think if you're at 370, I know it's not the same depending on where you are, but the average, you'd be close to 8% change is what that would come out to, wouldn't it be roughly? I mean, I realize that you're on the high end, it's different than you're on the low end, but, across your board, it'd be about an 8% increase in payroll, wouldn't it?
That's not
Yeah,
that
do
high.
that math in my head.
370, because on the one sheet, you had 7% was 322.
Right.
So if this is 370, it's got to be a little bit more.
I mean, I think that we need to keep in mind as well that last year, when we offered a 3% increase, inflation for last year was, or year before was what, 4.5%? And we only offered a 3% increase. So we're technically already down by 1.5%. And then if you're talking about inflation this year is 6%, then realistically, in order to cover the cost of living increases that employees are facing, we should be looking at 7 to 8% in my mind. But again, not on a percentage basis.
In all reality, though, most companies don't match the inflation rate every year. Hopefully, at some point, it does go down, but we still need to be competitive in the market to get and retain employees.
We're getting there. We're better than we were 5 years ago, but this would help a lot. This would go a long way.
So it's whatever you guys think is right with the wages for the dollar or percentage or whatever. And then if you decide to do anything for elected officials also, those are the two things we need guidance on, to be able to tell departments how to fill out their budgets. Of course, we've always stipulated since I got on council that anytime you propose a wage increase, whatever the percentage is, and we debated this many times, probably even since you and Yvette have come on and Keith has come on, well, all of you actually. And we've always sent out there that this is assuming that as we're going through the budget, we have these revenues to be able to do it. That being said, the other side of that coin has always been, if you put that percentage out there, they're going to expect that. So you kind of, we always had those discussions. If you say 5%, but you can only give 3%, well, so that's something to think about when you discuss what guidance you want to give us to send to departments.
Well, I don't know, but to start the ball rolling, I feel like it would make sense to get whatever raise you do, that it's raising the level, like the band, so that it's clear that it sort of fixes this whole thing about people trying to jump into the wrong band just because they think it doesn't fit the wage. So I definitely agree that instead of just doing an increase on what everybody's currently making, like you're doing an increase on the actual band itself.
On the base.
Yes, the base, yes.
Right. But that doesn't mean that moving forward that people can't exceed the base. We understand that.
Right.
Right. Okay. So circling back to elected officials, I mean, I need you guys to tell me what you want me to put together and what you want to see out of that. I can't decide for you.
I wouldn't propose, it's all lumped on the same, that we're a once a month board, but like the auditor, all the other departments, they're full-time jobs. And they'd all be included, right? I mean, as far as our council
Yeah.
and
If
the
you-
auditor, the
if you wanna
treasurer.
split it, you could split it. You could tell me that council's getting 3%, but the full-time employees, elected officials are getting $1. You could tell me that if you want to. I just need you to tell me what you wanna do.
I guess I'll leave it up for discussion. I don't feel that, we would need any sort of raise at a, not a minimal effort, but a less than a full-time position. I would expect the full-time position to get, some sort of a raise as well. And I would personally exclude county council.
Shannon, have you done a comparison concerning elected officials and counties similar in size to us? Are we like
No, but
close to them?
Yeah,
That maybe you could get us that information sometime?
And I mean, I don't want you guys to think that I'm sitting here saying that elected officials don't deserve anything, because I'm not saying that. I just want us to be mindful about the fact that if Tony's wage goes up to $80,000, then we can't change that no matter
Okay with
what, right? It can never go back down. But if my wage is
Shouldn't
80
have a
grand,
problem with that.
and then I leave, you can hire somebody at $50,000 for my position. You don't have to replace my job at what I made, right? But you do have to do that for elected officials.
Even 1 or 2% would be nice, just, that's my benefit for some of the other.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Wells County's doing 5% this year.
And I know they are doing a study over there, because I've been in contact with their auditor the last week or two. They wanted our wages, so I sent them our approved salary ordinance for this year, and I also sent them our bands the other day. And I know at the AIC meeting that we had went to a couple weeks ago, that they were asking how wages was going over here, and said that they're definitely looking into upping their wages, so. They're trying to get more competitive, because I know they are quite a bit lower right now.
They're lower than us, you said?
But they are trying, they know they need to get competitive, so they're working on that for this year's budgets.
So did you all, is there any kind of consensus on the $1 on the band? Is that what we're saying, or have we gotten that far yet?
I don't know if anybody's, what would more closely, I guess, obviously the higher one of the dollar would get them closer to our end goal of maybe I guess a standard private versus public pay. I guess the government jobs usually are paid a little less than private sector.
Right.
And
Yes, getting a combination of 75 cents plus performance evaluation, or $1 for those employees who are not eligible for performance evaluation would get us closer. I've said since I've started that I think that we need to be within 10 to 15% of private, and the 10 to 15% that we're not able to offer gets made up in benefits and a benefits package. And I've told you guys before that I try to stress that every single time I have somebody walk through my door that's gonna work here, how good our benefits are. But me talking about it can only go so far, right? Like, good health insurance unfortunately does not put a loaf of bread on the table. So I still think that's why we need to try to be within 10 to 15% of market
Right.
compared to private companies.
I think it'd be wise to offer guidance in both of our department head budget and us looking forward. And with I guess, Corey, going back to that 28 million, is this something we'd have to factor in as well?
I think we can,
In your thoughts?
I think we can fit it. I really do. I mean, like I said, I know it's across the board, but we had, if I'm just shooting off the top of my memory here, so it's not exactly right, but I think we had 350,000 unspent in county general last year, if I'm not
roughly.
mistaken.
341,000.
Yes.
310 of that was in the commissioner's budget.
Right. So, I mean, if you do 4 or 5%, you're talking 145 or 204. So, and not all of this comes out of county general. My understanding is these wages come, it depends which employee they're out of, so not even all that would come out of there. So I feel like you could do 4 or 5% and you could still be fine with keeping that top line number.
I guess I'll make a motion, we go with the 75 cents.
75 cents and
Dollar.
performative out or $1.
Mhm.
And then we're gonna raise the bands by $1.
No, that one that'd be, instead of 145 or 200,000, that'd be 370 to do that one, right? Because that, you're roughly on average more like 8% if you're doing that.
I mean, that's an 8%, yes, it's an average of an 8% increase across all salaries, but
Yeah.
again, top goes up, bottom stays low, and that's not our goal here, in my opinion.
That's an 8% increase in total money spent.
Yes, in total salaries, yes,
So some people are gonna see 15% and some will see 2%.
correct.
So I would almost think maybe of just doing the 4 or 5% option, if that's only 145 or 200,000, those I know we can fit, within what I'm talking about. And that would be
Are you talking about percent spent or increase in individual pay?
increase in the band and the pay. I think it's the same, right? You do,
I mean, I think that if we're not comfortable with that $370,000 number, we need to reevaluate what flat dollar this year we can offer, if not 75 or $1. Because I don't agree with offering a percentage every single year. Because again, the top's gonna go up and the bottom's gonna stay low.
could we do guidance and just say if we want to do, let's say if one of those 4 or 5%, pick the dollar amount and have her just work it backwards, say this, whatever that is, and then we don't need to do the math on it. We just say, 4.5% would probably be, about 175,000. So what's 175,000? We'll just say that's what the increase that we want to do, and you can fill in the blanks for what that means.
Well, that still just goes back to a percentage, because they'll look at it, you know what I mean?
No, she could cut it. Yeah, she can average it out.
If it's 50 cents an hour or.
Yeah.
She can take 175,000 of additional wage money that we're saying that we're okay with, and she can just do the math and tell us
It's gonna
that
be a
comes out
bigger
to.
increase for the lower paying people and the smaller one for the upper end.
Right, which is,
That's what that's what you want, right? I mean,
That's what we want. But
Yeah.
we also want to make sure that what we're offering is almost comparable. And I know that not everybody gets, inflation every year and raises, but we want to make sure that we're staying almost comparable with inflation, right? Like, I don't want to end up in a position where the top gets 1% and the bottom gets 10%, and inflation is 7% on the whole year, because then we're still behind.
And that's what I was saying, it still relates to percentage, because they'll look at the bottom, the bottom half of the tier got 15% and the top got a 1. I mean, I'm not arguing, I'm just saying that that's how it will be interpreted. And if we do $1, it'll still be interpreted that way. Not everybody will say, I got a $1 raise, they'll say, well, you're the lower tier, we got a 12% raise.
Well,
It's unfortunate they
to just keep this ball rolling so we're not here till noon, I would say, can we just, are you guys okay if we just say, 4.5%, which is 175,000 roughly, and let her do the math to say what that would be, as a flat amount. And it's gonna be less than $1, but it'll be maybe close to 50 cents, but let her do the exact math on it. And then this is just for advertising purposes, my understanding, right?
I just
So
need
we can
something to
adjust.
put in the letter to tell the departments what to put in their
Yeah,
budgets.
so we're not married to this. This is just to begin the process, so.
I guess I don't understand why, when I put all this together, now we're deciding that this is too much. I mean, you guys have had this information for
Yeah,
6 weeks.
I would assume go to the dollar, get us closer to the standard
Right.
where we want to end up.
Right.
That's fine, I'm just trying to break the conversation here,
Move it
so
along.
make that motion, and,
Now you're
that's more
recommending-
than I think I'm
Going with the
probably okay with.
Shannon's proposal.
So $1 per hour or 75 cents plus evaluation.
Correct.
And again, doesn't include elected officials. So you
Correct.
might be looking at an extra, I don't know, 40, 50 grand there, but you guys need to tell me what you want to see, and I can put those numbers together for you.
Shannon, I want to circle back around to the health insurance. We know that we budget 2 million every year for that. Is there a way that you can go to bid and see if we can get a different, what other options are out there as opposed to now we can get a better price at 1.75 million and now we have 250,000 that we could use that's freed up? Would that be an option?
That's a very convoluted and complex thing because there's a lot of factors that go into that. Again, it has to do with our claims history. If we have large claimants in one year, obviously our costs are going to be more expensive. We have administrative costs through our actual TPA. We have prescriptions costs. We have stop loss coverage costs. We have the end cap on the stop loss coverage cost. I mean, there's a lot. It's not,
But I know other counties, hold on.
Into health insurance.
I know other counties every 2 years will go to bid to make sure that they're getting, and when was the last time our county actually went to bid?
So we work with a plan management agency and they actually do bidding for us every single year on all of those different things. So they do some of that before us behind the scenes, but it's just a question of, and I'm not in a position to make this suggestion, if that agency that's doing that bidding for us is the best agency for the county. That would have to be discussed with Mark Burry, probably Julie Marie. I mean, there's a lot of people that would have to be involved in that conversation to to ask if we can change up, what we've been doing for the last couple of years. But it is in my mind. I know we've talked about it a little bit before. It is in my brain, something that I want to bring up eventually, so.
If we could find, a couple $100,000, that'd be great. We could reallocate it to raises.
Right.
No matter what, I do appreciate all the effort. I know I asked you to try and get some of those numbers together, so it makes this conversation a lot better that we actually have numbers with it this year, so I appreciate that, Shannon.
So John, you said, what was your motion, that dollar, what?
Shannon, could you repeat my motion?
So it's 75 cents plus evaluation or $1 per hour if you're not eligible for evaluation.
75.
And that bottom
Plus.
dollar is 375,000, you said?
Yes.
At one point in time, there are different definitions for this picture that I want to share, is that you can represent each person by way of what we call the scattergram, that you have so many people at $1. This person is at $7.50, another person is at $6.50, wherever they are. It would give us a better picture of who's getting what, as opposed to just saying, well, this is 75 cents plus evaluation, or $1 if you don't. But otherwise, it gives you a real clear picture of who's really getting the money, who's disadvantaged by what we're putting in place. And I think it would be helpful if we had something like that to look at by way of action.
Number of employees in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes, yeah. Or if you wanted to use bands instead of the hourly rate by way of individuals. I think it would give us a clearer picture of what we're really looking at, other than just looking at the dollar amount. Because there are some people that will be disadvantaged by way of what we do here. Just a thought, not necessary to discuss, but I think it would help us.
Okay, so I think John made the motion. I don't know if there's a second or not.
Not yet.
Second.
No, there is.
Fred seconded.
And the other options were to go with a percentage.
I mean, yeah, the other option is a percentage, or we wrote into the comp package that we could offer a one-time payment. But I mean, again, that doesn't help to do anything to combat, the cost of goods and services that are going up, that people are spending just to survive, pretty much.
You did the second, Tony. You did the second.
Fred?
Oh, okay, Fred. Okay.
Have a motion before us. All those in favor of?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
You did, no.
And
Corey and Yvette, no?
Corey, no. Okay.
Motion passes.
And I know I said it again, but I want to say it again. Shannon, I know that was a lot of work getting all these different options together, and we haven't had that, so I thank you for all your effort.
Did you want to give any direction at all on elected officials?
Yeah, we gotta have something.
Yeah, I gotta have something.
I know it's uncomfortable, but we gotta talk about it. I mean,
I can send this out and they're gonna email me back. and say,
We either got to say no or something or whatever the guidance is. Because we're part of the budget as well.
I would recommend a minimum of 3. Like I said, this is their full-time jobs. Yeah, I would recommend nothing for us. It's, you know,
You
we're not,
recommend what?
we're not surviving on our, I recommend a 3 at a minimum. This is just for discussion, it's not a proposal, yeah.
If that's a motion for 3% excluding council, I would second that. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm discussing. I guess that's what I said earlier. I wouldn't see any reason to include county council.
I will say that I would recommend we include commissioners in that, because yes, they're once a week, but they do a lot more than
Yes, I was,
once a week.
I was defaulting them, sorry. I was defaulting you guys as full-time, with all your meet, I mean, you guys are full-time.
Well, actually, he hasn't made it.
Yeah, those are his
Yeah.
meetings. Yes, I did not mean to exclude the commissioners by any means. I just assumed that they're,
I'm still
Full-time
holding out that
commissioners
80,000.
3 and council 0.
I think he was making the distinction not by full-time or part-time, but by just council. So anyone, everybody, all the elected except council.
excluding county council, everybody else.
You want to make that an official motion?
Yes.
Okay.
3%?
Well, I guess percentage-wise is 3% suffice.
Well, you can always lower it if you get in there and feel like you have to.
Yeah, what?
You can always lower it as you get into budgets and realize, oh, maybe this should have been 1 or 2 or something like that. You're just giving guidance. In other words, if I do my budget and I put it in with the direction you're giving, I know going into budgets that, oh, this could change.
Right. Yeah, I'll stick my
That makes
original
sense.
3%,
Because you want to have a
excluding
high.
all elected officials, excluding county council. Stan, go ahead.
I would disagree with you. Just because you're part-time does not mean that what you do is not important. What you do is very important. And what you do is very relevant to all the employees of the government. So do not underestimate the value of what you do. Just because you're not here full-time does not mean that you are not valuable. And people expect you to research and study the fiscal shape of our county plan. That's extremely important. So do not undervalue what you do just because you're not putting 40 or 50 hours.
Thank you.
Well, is there any effort to amend the motion as we had it presented to include council?
We don't have a second yet. All we have is John's motion. So if he's- Oh, Kathy seconded it? So, I don't know what the Robert's rules legalities are, if you wanted to amend that or not. Wouldn't you have to?
The original person making the motion makes a motion to amend their motion.
That's right.
Do we have to have a vote on the original motion first?
No,
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to get that straight here. And that's assuming that John wants to amend it. He may not.
I'm fine with my motion.
Okay. And Kathy seconded it.
All those in favor of the motion?
Yeah,
Keith?
3% without
No,
the council.
excluding council.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just raising my hand as a yes vote.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
One other thing regarding budgets. When we send the letter out to the departments, to the department heads, there have been years that we've said, hey, try to cut it this much, do this, do that. When, in the letter, Should we send it out and say, do a realistic budget? Is that how you want us to word that, knowing that when it comes back before council during the budget process, that's when you look at it and see what you're gonna do with it?
Well, it needs to be realistic.
I mean, the problem, if they don't do a realistic, and Corey, I think you had that up on there a little bit ago, when we pulled all those funds, if the budget had been realistic and all those additionals had been included, I think there was only one that would have been in the red. And that was, health, something like that. And that is one that they spend out of unappropriated, that you could take 3 of those out and really, you don't have to budget them because it's paid out of unappropriated. But, that's your guidance as council. Do you want us to tell them to be realistic? Or what direction do you want us to get them?
There's no point in putting something out there that's not. It needs to be realistic.
Is that any more discussion on that, or?
And Tony, as auditor, you should see if there's a huge request, you should be able to see that,
We usually
that
do ask them what,
raises a red flag.
And I know some of you have departments that you go to. Kathy, I think, comes to ours, and treasurer, recorder. So as that happens, whoever goes to these departments, we can relate to that council member at that time, hey, here's why, here's what we have coming. And Bree and I, when we go through those budgets, if we see something, we definitely do question them. And often, who is your council representative that comes to talk to you, because you need to talk to them about this. So yeah, we look at it, and you guys all also have discussions with who you have. Kathy's been up there a few times with all of us to ask that question, and I'm sure you guys are going out as well. So yeah, we do.
I would say 2 things to put in there would be to make sure they know that when they make their budget compared to last year, they need to be looking at last year's spending, not last year's budget, would be the first thing, because that is much more realistic. So build it based off of what they spent, not what they were budgeted last year, number 1. And number 2, I would tell them that we have voted here that we're in agreement that we want that final line item for the whole budget to be roughly the same. So if they're gonna ask for more than what they were budgeted last year, that's fine, but just recognize that means somewhere else, somebody's gonna have to change a little bit.
That's a recommendation.
If possible.
Right.
Do we want evaluations turned in at the same time as budget request?
I think that's what we did last year, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, because we gotta have those numbers to do.
we gotta put them all together and figure them out.
I think that's policy now. It was written in our,
think it's in.
I have Julie Marie did a,
Is there a policy that says when they're due?
It just says that it's gonna be contingent upon, the raises will be contingent upon the evaluations, but I believe that council decides when they're going to be due every year.
So tell them that they're due when they turn in their budget request.
On top of it.
Yes.
That's what council believes, yes.
So, yeah, let's say they're due at the time they submit their budgets. Just to throw another wrench in the works, because it's what I do. We still do have seasonal and part-time. Shannon, what did we run, or Bree, both of you, what did we run into regarding part-time? Wasn't there,
Because if part-time aren't in a band, we didn't know what to do from last year.
and there's like a couple different things out there with Park and Rec, for example. How should we address seasonal and part-time employees?
So what I proposed with 370 includes part-time, seasonal, everybody.
That includes them too?
Everybody.
Okay,
Because we still have some that are in a band, right? Like Park and Rec is still a band for part-time. They're not
Okay.
categorized yet, and they got missed last year. They were told not
Okay. I just wanted to verify that part-time and seasonal are included, just for direction from the departments that have that.
Yeah. that's
So,
all.
okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay, recommendations going forward?
Next is other matters, if there are any other matters.
Yeah, we're into that section of the agenda where other matters properly presented.
I don't think we need any other matters.
Lacking any?
We
Call
had-
for a motion?
we had enough
I'm
other
sorry,
matters.
Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn?
Second.
John second.
Was that John? And I assume 100% voted yes on that?
Yeah.
Always.